Bonjour, this is Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast. It's the podcast that's all about the cuisine that is said to have founded modern cooking. French ingredients and dishes have been the starting block for many of the world's best chefs and cooks. And on Fabulously Delicious, well, you'll learn all about those dishes and ingredients, as well as get to know more about fabulous French foodies. I'm your host, Andrew Pryor. Enchanté!
Enchanté.
My life changed when I competed on MasterChef Australia, and now I'm living my best life right here in the French countryside. Well, actually not here. This backdrop is a friend of mine's house in Normandy that I'm just staying in whilst dog minding for a few days. But you can come and see me in the Vienne. We'll talk about that a little bit later in my home, Montmorillon. Cooking, eating, meeting wonderful locals, food producers, and drinking amazing wines, eating delicious cheese. Apparently there's more than 1,500 varieties of cheese in France. I think I'm going to try and eat my way through all of them and share these fabulous experiences with you. Yes, you, my fabulously delicious audience. Over the past 4 seasons, I've been doing a series, The Story Of, about fabulous French chefs from the past that have made their own stamp on French cuisine throughout history. Last month, I brought you Alain Sanderson, who, as some would say, is the founder of Nouvelle Cuisine. But who are some of the other chefs that I've profiled? Well, in this, a first part episode of a 2-part series that I'm going to do for you, I'm collating all of those past 10 chefs that I've made profiles on into 2 fabulous episodes for you. So sit back, turn the volume up. If you're not driving, pour yourself a glass of wine, break a baguette. Add a bit of saucisson maybe, and some of that delicious cheese. Yum. And enjoy today's episode of Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast, the story of some fabulous French chefs. Auguste Escoffier has been described as the king of chefs and the chef of kings. His legacy to French cuisine is still enduring today, and his cookbooks are indispensable to modern French chefs and cooks. He's credited, amongst other things, as working in the kitchen from a so-called labourer's job to that of an artist, and is the man behind the 5 French mother sauces, to name just a few recipes. Even today, he remains possibly the foremost chef in French cuisine. This is his story. Born George Auguste Escoffier on Wednesday the 28th of October in 1846 in the Villeneuve-l'Abbé, a small village near Fresnes in the Provence region of France. Villeneuve-l'Abbé was created by the joining of 2 villages, the old village of Villeneuve, inland, and the village of l'Abbé on the shore of the Mediterranean Sea. Its inhabitants were called Villeneuvois. The house where he was born is now the Musée de l'Art Culinaire, run by the foundation Auguste Escoffier. His father was a farrier, also known as blacksmiths, a hard job indeed. His father also cultivated tobacco plants for a living, so definitely a hard worker and someone Auguste would get his work ethic from. It was his grandmother that probably instilled in the young Auguste an appreciation for cooking, as she was said to be a very enthusiastic cook. Young Auguste attended the local school until the age of just 12, when his father thought it was necessary that, like him, he should learn a trade. His father saw the artistic side of his young son, who enjoyed drawing but encouraged him to pursue this as a hobby, not a career, and told him that he needed a career that was more practical. So he took Auguste to Nice, where his brother had a restaurant.
Coming to France?
The restaurant
Are you planning a trip to
on
France?
the corner of the current
Paris?
Place Messina. In 1859, Auguste, at the age of just 13, started an apprenticeship as a chef. As an apprentice, Escoffier was bullied and hit by his uncle. His small nature made him even more of a target in the kitchen, as he was too short to safely even open doors. Eventually, he wore boots with built-up heels so that he could appear taller and be able to do the job properly. For this strictness of training, he would later, in his memoirs, express gratitude. He started as a kitchen boy and commis saucier, or sauce boy, and was initiated into the basic tasks of restaurant upkeep, such as the selection of ingredients and the servicing of customers. During this time, Escoffier also attended night school and had to juggle his studies with the demands of a budding career. Escoffier showed such an aptitude for cooking and kitchen management that he was soon hired by the nearby Hotel Bellevue, where the owner of a fashionable Paris restaurant, Le Petit Moulin Rouge, offered him the position of commis rôtisseur, the apprentice roast cook, and then the sausage clerk. All of this at just the age of 19. However, only months after arriving in Paris, Escoffier was called to active military duty, where he was given the position of army chef. Escoffier spent nearly 7 years in the army. At first, stationed in various barracks throughout France, including 5 months in Villefranche-sur-Mer, coincidentally, not just 3 miles from his old home in Nice, and later at Metz as chef de cuisine of the Rhine Army after the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. When captured during this war, he became the chef of Marshal MacMahon, who led the war with Napoleon. MacMahon would later go on to become the president of France from 1875 until 1879. Escoffier's experiences in the army led him to study the technique of canning food and preserving it, especially since at that time fresh ingredients were in short supply. So he tested various forms of canning for meats, sauces, and even a technique of preserving tomato sauce in champagne bottles. The influence on army life on his culinary methods didn't stop there. His experience in the military also showed him how groups could be organised and coordinated towards achieving a common goal. After the war, Escoffier reorganised his kitchen into a military-like brigade system, which is the basis of the French kitchen hierarchy now established in modern restaurants. Cooks were assigned specific roles and locations and were headed by supervisors, the generals of the kitchen. They ensured every situation was working in conjunction with each other. Terms we use today, such as the chef de cuisine, the sous-chef, and saucier, were pioneered by Escoffier under this kitchen brigade system. Sometime before 1878, he opened his own restaurant, Le Faisan d'Or, the Golden Pheasant, in Cannes. This was a grocery store that Escoffier would add a restaurant to for the winter season, as Cannes became the must-do resort for rich and famous clientele, especially the English. On Wednesday, the 28th of August 1878, Escoffier married Delphine Daffus, the daughter of a Parisian publisher, Paul Daffus. Delphine is said to have been a poet of some distinction, and that apparently Escoffier won her hand in marriage in a gamble with her father over a game of billiards. They would have 3 children together, Paul, Daniel, and Germaine. When his in-laws died months later, he would sell the Golden Pheasant and move to Paris. Escoffier's writing career started with publications of journals in the Art Culinaire magazine. Escoffier wrote Memories of a Cook of the Army of the Rhine and The Feeding of the Soldier in the Countryside. His first book, though, was not a cookbook, but a book about creating wax flowers, which he loved to do since childhood. Today, the book is so rare that it can fetch up to €2,500 a copy. In 1884, Escoffier began working with Caesar Ritz, the founder of the famous Ritz-Carlton hotel brand. They'd met in October of 84 when Caesar was the director of the Grand Hotel de Monte Carlo. Caesar wanted Escoffier to take the direction of the kitchens in winter and the kitchens of the Grand National in Lucerne in summer. The partnership between Ritz and Escoffier counts as amongst the happiest events of their lives, noted Mrs. Ritz in her book about her husband. It was at this time that train travel would see a marked development. The Riviera, as the Côte d'Azur was not yet in existence, was linked to Paris by the railway as of 1865. And from 1883 to 1896, fast luxury trains were launched one after the other: the Orient Express, the the Calais-Rome, which went through Nice, the Sud Express and the Nord Express. All of these encouraged tourism. The future King of Denmark, Frederick VIII, Empress Elizabeth of Austria, King Francis II of the Two Seychelles, Queen Victoria, the Prince of Wales, the Emperor of Brazil Dom Pedro, and the Grand Dukes of Russia came to Monte Carlo, all revelling in luxury and magnificence. Then, in 1890, Ritz would become the manager of the Savoy Hotel in London, and Ritz wanted Escoffier in charge of the kitchen as its head chef. The Savoy was one of the most prestigious and beautiful hotels of its time, and began attracting wealthy and often famous clients. It had a reputation for culinary excellence under Escoffier's years there. Escoffier would often invent new dishes inspired by its hotel's guests. One such guest was the Australian opera singer Nellie Melba, who Escoffier created the peach Melba for whilst she was staying at the hotel. The peach Melba is a dessert of peaches and raspberry sauce with vanilla ice cream. At this time, Escoffier also created homages to the great ladies of society: Regine Salad, Rachel Mignonnet of Quail, Pears Mary Garden, Poulard Adelina Patty, Coupevette, Strawberries Sarah Bernhard, and also the Melba Toast. In 1897, actually, Escoffier created the Jubilee Cherise dessert for the occasion of Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. In the kitchen, Escoffier's innovations tended toward simplification. As head chef at the Carlton, he faced the challenge of having to prepare superb dishes quickly for the hotel's high-powered clientele, and he found many inefficiencies in the organisation of the standard restaurant kitchen. In Escoffier's day, the restaurant kitchen was comprised of separate units in which groups of chefs worked on their own, often duplicating each other's tasks and creating more work than was necessary. Escoffier insisted on unifying and streamlining the restaurant kitchen so that his staff of about 60 chefs could work together seamlessly and quickly, serving as many as 500 dishes on a typical Sunday dinner at the Carlton. The working conditions of kitchen labourers also begged improvement, and Escoffier recognised and answered these needs. In the French chef's day, the atmosphere of the kitchen was loud and often chaotic, overheated with wood or coke-fired stoves, and rife with powerful cooking odours, creating working conditions that were more intolerable. Escoffier aimed to curb these excesses, which often compromised the health of these kitchen workers. He even hired a doctor to help concoct a comfortable and healthy beverage made with barley that cooks could drink in place of alcohol. Through these and other improvements, Escoffier helped to raise the esteem of a profession that had once been regarded as lowly and coarse. Escoffier and Caesar, along with the maître d'hôtel Louis Enchant, would go on to manage the Hotel Ritz in Paris and the Carlton Hotel in London. On Sunday the 5th of June in 1898, some of the most important personalities from around the world and Parisian society, Marcel Proust, Le Duc de Lévis-Millepois, Gordon Bennett, Santos Dumont, Bon de Castel, to name a few, gathered for the inauguration of the Hotel Ritz in Paris at the Place de Vendôme. This event was a smashing success and brought immediate prestige to the hotel. On leaving the Savoy to open the Ritz in Paris, the then Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII, said publicly of Caesar Ritz that wherever Ritz goes, we shall follow. Escoffier's innovations would also be seen in front of the house, where he stopped the practice of all the courses being served at the same time. Instead, food would come out in the order it was requested by the guests, who would choose from specific individual dishes from a menu, hence the term à la carte. Escoffier invented the set price menu, for a minimum of 4 people, which quickly met with success among the Carlton's demanding and busy clientele. To promote French products in the UK, he had 4,500 pounds of butter delivered from Normandy and Brittany every month. He went to Loris in Provence to encourage farmers to grow green asparagus instead of white, because, well, that's what the English preferred. The same for peaches from the Rhone Valley. And Escoffier introduced London's poultry farmers to the Rowan duck, which couldn't be found there at the time. He managed to have tin crushed tomatoes, a recipe that he'd developed during his time at the Petit Moulin Rouge, produced and delivered by a fruit and vegetable preserving company. And he even managed, during a great ball for 600 people, to serve a cold dish called Aurora nymph's legs. Happy to have the English, who called the French people froggies, unknowingly eat frog's legs, with a little help from the Prince of Wales, who adored them. A true humanitarian at heart, Escoffier took to fighting against poverty, and in 1890 he would give unserved food from the Savoy Hotel to the Little Sisters of the Poor in London daily. This practice continued until his retirement in 1920. In addition, he also started the first fundraising dinners for charitable causes, such as helping retired chefs in need. Escoffier's first cookbook, or culinary guide as it would be called, would be published in 1903 and then reissued 3 times during his lifetime, in 1907, 1912 and 1921. The Guide Culinaire would be published in more than 10 languages and become known as the Cook's Bible. The book was an exhaustive resource, including about 5,000 recipes and garnish preparations. Le Guide, known to English speakers as the Escoffier Cookbook, remains an invaluable resource for contemporary cooks even today. At this time, he also created the first ever chefs' union in Great Britain. From 1904, Escoffier consulted with the Hamburg America line to arrange the kitchens of their cruise ships. Then, one day in 1913, he was put in charge of the kitchen of the SS Imperator, an enormous ocean liner of the Hamburg America line, where he met Kaiser William II. The culinary experience on board the Imperator was overseen by the Ritz-Carlton, and the restaurant itself was a reproduction of Escoffier's Carlton restaurant in London. Escoffier was charged with supervising the kitchens on board the Imperator during the Kaiser's visit to France. 146 German dignitaries were served a large multi-course luncheon, followed that evening by a monumental dinner that included the Kaiser's favourite strawberry pudding, named Fraser's Imperator, created by Escoffier for the occasion. The Kaiser was so impressed that he insisted on meeting Escoffier after breakfast the next day, where he told Escoffier, "I am the Emperor of Germany, but you are the Emperor of Chefs." Ritz gradually moved into retirement after opening the Ritz London Hotel in 1906, leaving Escoffier as the figurehead of the Carlton until his own retirement in 1920. He continued to run the kitchens through the First World War, during which his young son was killed in active service. In 1911, Escoffier created a magazine called Le Carnet d'Épicure. This magazine's purpose was to promote tourism in France amongst the English. Escoffier was as much an ambassador for France as he was for French cuisine. Getting close to retirement age didn't seem to stop Escoffier, as in 1911 he also opened a kitchen and dining room at Westminster College in London, and only just narrowly escaped a fire at the Carlton. His second cookbook, but third book, The Livre de Menus, came out in 1912 to rave reviews. In this book, Escoffier gave every cook multiple tips with French cooking cuisine, many that are still applicable today. The creation of the League of Gourmands organisation by Escoffier saw the first Epicure dinner in 1912. This dinner brought together more than 300 people at the Cecil Hotel in London, and more than 4,000 guests in 37 European restaurants. The same French dinner served the same day in different places around the world. In 1914, the 10th and last Epicure dinner brought together more than 10,000 guests in 140 cities in Europe, New York, and Montreal. At the age of 73, Escoffier received the Knight of the Legion d'Honneur. The National Order of the Legion of Honor is the highest French order of merit, both military and civil. Established in 1802 by Napoleon Bonaparte, it has been retained by all latter French governments and regimes. Escoffier was the first cook to receive this distinction. Paul Bocuse, Roger Verge, Dominique Bouchette, Daniel Boulud, and Georges Blanc have all gone on to receive this honour. Retiring from his role at the Carlton Hotel in 1920, Escoffier would fund the Association of Chef Societies, known as the World Association of Chef Societies, in 1928, and become the president of the organisation. He left London to retire to his villa in Monte Carlo after 61 years of working in kitchens. He would have trained in that time more than 2,000 chefs, who would go on to make French cuisine and products known around the world. During retirement, he would also become an honorary editor of the first editorial board of La Revue Culinaire, a popular French cuisine and culture magazine still published today. Not long after arriving in Monte Carlo, he was presented with an offer he just couldn't resist. The widow of his former Petit Moulin Rouge colleague Jean Criot invited Escoffier to collaborate with her in the administration of the Hôtel de Hermitage. The French chef accepted, eluding retirement, and even went on to help develop another hotel, the Riviera in Upper Monte Carlo. And then he travelled to New York in 1930 to open the Hôtel Pierre. During retirement, he created 2 books aimed at low-income consumers: Le riz, la menthe, le meilleur, le plus nutritif. Rice, the best, most nutritious food, in 1927. And La vie à bon marché, l'amoureux, cheap life, cod, in 1929. So that Escoffier could continue to campaign for everyone to be able to eat properly. His last book, Ma Cuisine, or My Cuisine, was published in 1934. During his life, Escoffier had left behind a legacy for chefs, home cooks, and gastronomes who love French food around the world. He invented over 10,000 recipes, formed culinary institutions around the world which would continue to teach his methods to inspiring chefs. And in 1966, the French government transformed the house Escoffier was born in into a culinary museum. On Wednesday the 6th of February 1935, Escoffier's wife of nearly 56 years died, Delphine. And 6 years later, at the age of 99, George Auguste Escoffier passed away, and they were buried together at the family vault in Villeneuve-les-Bains. Today, Escoffier's legacy lives on in the Escoffier Museum of Culinary Art and Foundation and the Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. His influence is infused into students, aspiring chefs and home cooks throughout the world. In 2006, the Principality of Monaco honoured Escoffier by issuing a stamp with his image on it. George Auguste Escoffier is the father of modern French cooking, that without his influence, the way we eat, dine, and even live would be completely different. From sauces to desserts, kitchen hygiene, cooking stations, and even the books we read has been touched by Escoffier. His life is one that we can all aspire to. Good food, good cooking, good products, good wine, a good work ethic, and above all, treat people well. This is the story of George Auguste Escoffier. Coming to France? Are you planning a trip to France, or Paris even? Or are you one of the lucky ones that live in Paris? Well, I've been lucky enough to live in Paris as well. And I can say this, I pretty much ate my way through Paris for you. So with all that experience of eating, drinking, and exploring the city of lights, love, and good food, I thought, well, I need to bring that experience to you, my fabulously delicious audience. And what better way to do that than with a book? So I created my first book, a food guide to Paris called Paris, a fabulous food guide to the world's most delicious city. In it, you'll find more than 379 recommendations of boulangeries, cafes, chocolate shops, fromageries, markets, marchés, as we call them here in France. Yep, patisseries, restaurants, and wine bars. But there's also food streets, gourmet and kitchen supply stores, and so much more. Paris, a fabulous food guide to the world's most delicious city, is available on my website. It's a 2024 edition, which means that it's pretty much up to date with fabulous recommendations for you. And every year, I plan on updating it so that each year is a new edition for you. You can get a copy, as I said, on my website, where you can even get a signed and gift package version, or you can go to Amazon. It's available there, and it's even available as a Kindle version. Paris, a fabulous food guide to the world's most delicious city. I hope you enjoy it.
Edouard Nignon was born on Thursday the 9th of November 1865 at number 2 Rue Faber in Nantes. He was the sixth of 8 children. His father, Pierre Nignon, was a labourer, and his mother, Anne, a seamstress. Like so many young children at the time, at the age of 9, Edouard started his working life, his as an apprenticeship in the kitchen at Cambron restaurant. A year later, he joined Monnier restaurant. This is where he learned to read and write. This restaurant was also where he first would start work in the kitchen. He told a friend and future colleague, Danielle Morquet, about that time. He said, "I will not take long to love, with all the ardour of my youthful faith, my beautiful profession, and I firmly resolved to serve it at its best that I could." The teenager felt that his vocation revealed himself, strengthened himself, and that his path was traced, which he would not follow without failure. Edouard went on to work in restaurants in Angers and Cholet before moving on to Paris at the age of just 15 years old. In Paris, he worked with some of the great chefs at the time and became an assistant to the saucier, who, at that time in the kitchen, was the most important chef. He would start as a help saucier at Bignon, the chef saucier at Poisson, the chef entremetteur at the 1889 World Exposition, the chef rôtissier at La Pérouse, and the chef de cuisine at Marveillot. This time in Paris is said to have influenced his later working life in Russia. In Paris, he would work at renowned houses, then in turn cook for the visiting Russian Tsar. And then in 1896 at the French Embassy, he would cook for the Tsar on an official visit. During this work in Paris, he has said about his time, "I acquired extensive experience in my art, but eager to acquire more, I practiced successfully at the Maison Dorée, the Café Anglais, the Temple of l'Écosse, the Café Voisin, the Bignon restaurant, and with my eminent compatriot Letorte, the greatest cook I have known in my career, at the Magny restaurant, where I saw so many celebrities parade." Sunday, the 16th of September in 1888, Edouard would marry Josephine Lucas, who was a cook. A year later, they would have a son, Marcel Edouard. 1892 saw Edouard and his family move to Austria, where he cooked for Franz Joseph I, who was the Emperor of Austria. Edouard is credited with inventing the bouchelet tournagelle, a veal kidney and rice stew inspired by the Austrian Borscht stew. Edouard loved unusual taste combinations. He liked to pair oysters with camembert, or he had a dish, the homard à la dinornaise, which is a lobster salad with truffles, mustard and pickles. This was called the Insane Trio. His time in Austria saw him work at the Trianon, a popular restaurant in the Austrian capital Vienna. Edouard would meet all kinds of foreign cooks and chefs during his travels and work, and this would help him to open his horizons to other cuisines, not just French cuisine. In 1897, Edouard left for London to open a restaurant at the famed London hotel Claridge's. At Claridge's, he was hired as the master chef. At the time, Claridge's was named the most beautiful hotel in the world. It would attract the elite of London society and high society from around the world. Getting a name for himself in the kitchen, Edouard would become available to the who's who to be rented out as a cook at their princely houses for amazing banquets. He would cook at places like Château de Chantilly for the Duke of Orléans, and also in Paris for a banquet for the Duke of Compossé. He would at this time, like the famed Antoine Carême, become known as the Cook of the Kings. In 1896, sadly, Josephine, his wife, died, leaving Edouard a widow and a single father. At the turn of the century, Edouard and Marcel would move to Russia. He would work at the Hermitage restaurant in Moscow. He was chosen from 5 other chefs for the role. During the evening, he would cook for high dignitaries and the extremely wealthy Russian lords, who were all great lovers of French cuisine. On Thursday, the 22nd of August in 1901, Edouard, at the General Consulate of France and then afterwards at the Church of St. Louis in Moscow, would marry his second wife, Marie Antoinette Simon. Edouard worked at the Grand Hotel Metropole in Moscow from 1905. He cooked for the Emperor Nicholas II of Russia. During this time, Edouard and Marie Antoinette would have a daughter, Berthe Marie. In this time in Russia, Edouard would create a French bakery, the first in Russia. Having survived revolutions, world wars, as far as I can see, it still exists today, and the last owner of it was a Frenchman. The Grand Hotel Metropole dining room in Moscow had 105 tables. The beginning of the revolution would see workers in the kitchen going on strike, and then further issues around this time would see Edouard less comfortable with his young family being in Russia. At the time, he said that he almost perished under the bullets of a Cossack. The sudden intervention of one of his employees shouting at the soldier, "Don't shoot, he's a brother," had saved his life. This time in Russia was marred by the death of his daughter Berthe Marie at the age of just 6. So in 1908, Edouard left for Paris for the opening of the Majestic Hotel, which is now the Peninsula Hotel on Avenue Kléber. He then bought La Rue restaurant in Paris off of the Count de Uzès. The restaurant was opened in 1886 opposite Church de Madeleine on the corner of Place de Madeleine and Rue Royale. The clientele for his first restaurant on his own would be the who's who of society, kings and queens of Europe, Russian royalty, writers like Marcel Proust, Anatole France, and Edmond Rostand. On Monday, the 21st of June, 1909, Edouard would be awarded the Knight of the Order of Agriculture for his work at creating culinary exhibitions, which he'd done since opening La Rue. During World War I, everything would change. Life would forever be different, from his experiences at the restaurant and cooking to his personal life. In France, people saw that holidays were abolished, money was scarce, so the restaurant business would be very slow and very different. Edouard was to cook for US President Wilson during his 2 stays in Paris. Sadly though, on Thursday the 8th of October 1941, Marcel, his son, who was just 25 years old, was part of the 160th Infantry Regiment, and he would be killed at the fight of Boissel-in-Somme. Edouard started during the First World War to write cookbooks. His first was L'Heptameron de Gourmet ou les délices de la cuisine française, which translates to The 7 Days of Gourmets or The Delights of French Cuisine. This was released in 1919. The book would be dedicated to his late son, Marcel. On Saturday, the 8th of January in 1921, Edouard was appointed the Knight of the Legion of Honour by decree of the Ministry of the Interior. This was for, amongst other things, his distinguished services rendered during the war to charities, and in particular as the founder of an orphanage for the war orphans of his restaurant. Édouard Nignon also participated in the financing of a Parisian retirement home, more particularly for retired chefs. Sometime in 1921, he would stop work in the restaurant for health reasons. He would undergo a very risky operation at the time to remove a kidney. In 1924, he released Ouest Éclair, The West Eclair, which was later reissued in 1928. His third book, the title is very long, so bear with me. It is Le plaisir de la table, où sous une forme nouvelle, l'auteur a dévoilé mon délicieux secret et recettes de bonne cuisine, transcrit les précieux avis de gourmets fameux et de fins gastronomes, conseillers aimables et sous un l'art de bien manger. Well, translated, that means the pleasures of the table, where the author uses a new form to reveal many delicious secrets and recipes of fine cuisine, transcribing precious advice of famous gourmets and fine gastronomes, kind and confident counsellors of the art of fine dining. Wow, what a magnificent title for a book. It was released in 1926. Finally, in 1928, Edouard retired. In 1933, Éloge de la cuisine française, Praise of French Cuisine, was published. It promoted deglazing with water, clear broths, and parsimonious seasoning, which means to use small amounts or use the leftovers in the cooking process. This had a preface by Sacha Guitry, who was a famous French actor and playwright, as well as director. Michel Girard, who was one of the founders of Nouvelle Cuisine, said of Edouard that he was a visionary chef who had a huge influence on French cooks like himself and Jean Robuchon. Edouard bought the Château de la Haute Forêt in Brielle-sous-Montfort, near Rennes, a village where his son's name is written on the war memorial. Under the supervision of his nephew, Chef Célestin Duplat, La Rue, Edouard's restaurant would be honoured with 3 Michelin stars and would keep them until the Second World War. On Tuesday the 30th of October 1934, in Breux-sur-Montfort, in Brittany, Edouard died of a uremia attack, or kidney failure, at the age of 68 years old. He left behind his fortune, it is said, to his second in charge to reward him for his loyalty. In 2010, an original copy of Edouard's first book was sold for €16,000. Chef Yvonne Garnier founded a cooking school in Nantes named the Culinary Institute Édouard Nignon. In Nantes, there is a street even bearing Edouard's name. Some of the dishes attributed to Edouard are Celestines de foie gras Valmore, jambon de Luxelles with figs, and consommé aux jambes de bois, which would then become a famous dish by Paul Bocuse. Despite being known by many of the world's great chefs, to the everyday French food-loving public, Edouard Nignon and his life is little known. So I hope that this might change, even just a little bit by this episode. Nicolas de Rambardy, in his guide to the best restaurants in France, says about Edouard, "The great gentleman of modern cuisine was not Escoffier, but Edouard Nignon. Escoffier served the profession of a cook, not the culinary art. Fernand Poix was the continuation of Nignon's cuisine, which was of a root simplicity."
Bonjour, bonsoir, wherever you're listening. Could you please do me a favour and Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast, a favour, and rate me wherever you're listening to Fabulously Delicious. This will really help get more listeners, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. And so a 5-star rating and review there would really help. Merci. Merci beaucoup. Born Elizabeth Marie Rosé Artemis Gourvac on Sunday the 5th of February 1899 in Bruges, an area in Belgium where the people are often described to be Flemish. Elizabeth was born to parents Edouard Gourvac and Marie Barthels. She would grow up with her family and friends calling her Lizzie. Bruges is a coastal city of Belgium that is well known for its historic centre that's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Growing up here as a child, Lizzie would have been surrounded by canals, seafood and tourists. As in the late part of the 19th century, Bruges became one of the world's first tourist destinations, with English and French tourists coming in droves with their money to spend. This maybe gave her, subconsciously, her inspiration for her future project. On Thursday, the 17th of August 1933, Elizabeth married in Brussels Max Vincent Brassart, who was from Paris. In 1945, at the age of 46, Elizabeth purchased what was a struggling school from a Catholic orphanage, which had inherited it after the school's founder died in the late 1930s. In fact, charities in France inheriting property is more a regular occasion than you might think. People often leave properties and items to charities to sell on their behalf, so as to avoid the largest inheritance tax depending on whom is the beneficiary. The school was none other than Le Cordon Bleu. The school was founded by Martha Distel and Henri Paul Bellepat in 1895. Cordon Bleu, the name, came from the Order of the Holy Spirit. Cordon Bleu is the nickname given to the Knights of the Holy Spirit when he appoints a great chef. The Order of the Holy Spirit was the most illustrious of the decorations of the French monarchy. It was founded in 1578 by Henry III during the Wars of Religion to bring together the main leaders of the Catholic Church against the Protestants. The Knights of the Order wore as a badge a Maltese cross suspended from a wide ribbon of sky blue. Abolished during the French Revolution, the Cordon Bleu constituted for 2 centuries the supreme distinction in French aristocracy, like the highest ranks of the current Legion of Honour. Applied to the kitchen, the expression first appeared in 1814. It's said to have originated from the habit taken by high figures in the church in the 17th century. Several of these high figures would regularly meet for a succulent lunch, and these famed meals would be termed the Make Cordon Bleus feasts. In 1895, a journalist by the name of Martha Distel published her first cooking diary in a newspaper, La Cuisine Cordon Bleu. In view of the success of the newspaper's articles, she embarked on culinary demonstrations and then opened the first Le Cordon Bleu school with cook Henri Paul Bellepat.
Elizabeth, during her time with Le Cordon Bleu, was responsible for bringing in some very notable chefs to teach the students at the cooking school. Max Bernard, who actually worked when he was younger for Auguste Escoffier, is noted as the man who taught Julia Childs how to flip an omelette, and then, through Julia, taught so many of us. Claude Filmont, who was the pastry chef at the acclaimed Café de Paris, and Pierre Mongelat, former president of the Académie Culinaire de France, were some of the chefs, to name a few, that worked at Le Cordon Bleu during Elizabeth's time. They all brought a wealth of experience with them to their students at Le Cordon Bleu. The Cordon Bleu was closed during the war, and so Elizabeth is the person who reopened and turned the business around. Also under Elizabeth's leadership, the school became international, with students coming from all around the world, most notably from the US and even Japan. Under Elizabeth's ownership, Le Cordon Bleu became one of the preeminent culinary schools of the world. There were many famous and fabulous students that passed through the halls of Le Cordon Bleu during Elizabeth's ownership, and many painted her unfavourably in their accounts of their time at the school. But isn't this a continuing theme with the successful females in business world in the past, and possibly even the present? So I feel that some of these accounts should be taken with a grain of salt perhaps, hence the reason why I'm choosing not to note them all here. Elizabeth isn't around to defend herself now, is she? But one account that has been portrayed of Elizabeth was in the 2009 Nora Ephron film Julie and Julia, about the lives of famed cook Julia Childs and the blogger who spent a year cooking every recipe in Julia's acclaimed cookbook, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. Nina Zagat was a student at Le Cordon Bleu at the same time as Julia Childs. Nina, whose husband happened to be Tim Zagat, both founded the Zagat Survey in 1979, which produced restaurant guides based on ratings collected by the restaurant's diners. The Zagat guides started in New York with ratings by their friends and then would grow to over 70 different cities. In September 2011, Google bought Zagat for more than $150 million US. Tim Zagat is also infamously known as the victim stabbed during a screening of Dancing with Wolves in LA. Very random. The Zagats were inducted into the Hospitality Industry Hall of Fame and the James Beard Who's Who in Food and Beverage Awards. When the movie came out, Nina and her husband came out in defense of Elizabeth and stated that Elizabeth was more sympathetic in real life. Nina said that having known both women, I can safely say that it's hard to imagine two less compatible people. Julia was tall, assertive, with a loud, braying voice in English. Whereas Madame Brassart, Elizabeth Brassart, was in contrast. She was petty, elegant, and aristocratic, and spoke impeccable French and English, as well as several other languages. Nina also said that Madame Brassart had a great sense of humour and could be very funny in an understated way. Nina finished her statement saying that Elizabeth's achievements as a culinary educator, much like Julia's, are indisputable. Elizabeth's niece, Martine Vermeulen, who's an acclaimed ceramicist, once quoted her Auntie Elizabeth by saying that laughter was de rigueur, which means laughter was the order of the day for Elizabeth. Maureen also said that you could never put anything over on her, not with those eyes. There's a scene in the movie, Julie plus Julia, where Madame Brassart and Julia Child's interaction is as follows. Madame Brassart says to Julia Childs, "Is it true you plan to teach?" Julia says, "Yes, we're going to teach Americans in Paris how to cook." Madame Brassard says, "Madame Child, I must tell you, you have no real talent for cooking." And she laughs. But the Americans, they will never know the difference. Personally, I find it hard to believe that such an astute businesswoman who turned his cook school around to be so successful teaching other nationalities French cuisine would think this, let alone say it. But who knows? Me, I don't know. But to think that both ladies are known for their senses of humour, can we maybe say they weren't such adversaries? Even if Elizabeth did fail Julia on her first exam. Elizabeth was portrayed in the movie, Julie plus Julia, by Joan Juliet Buck. Joan Juliet Buck was an acclaimed American writer and actress. She was born in Los Angeles in 1948 and is not only an acclaimed actress of stage and screen, but also an accomplished journalist, writer, and the previous editor-in-chief of French Vogue from 1994 to 2001. She's the only American ever to have edited a French magazine. Joan is also the contributing editor of Vogue and Vanity Fair, and the author of 2 novels and her own memoir, The Price of Illusion, in 2017. But back to Elizabeth. During the time of Elizabeth's ownership of Le Cordon Bleu, the school in London in 1953 would create the coronation chicken dish that would be served to foreign dignitaries at the coronation lunch for the late Queen Elizabeth II. Just to point out, if you don't know yet, Elizabeth Brassart's name is with an S, not a Z, like the Queen. It's like Liza Minnelli. It's Lisa with an S, not Z. Yeah, sort of the same thing. In 1954, Bill Wilder directed Audrey Hepburn in the movie Sabrina. In the movie, Audrey's character Sabrina is sent to Paris to cook at a cooking school. The idea for this came from the success of Le Cordon Bleu at the time. Elizabeth Brassart was a smart businesswoman who would gain an international reputation for her vision of the future of cooking. She would say that people around the world would enjoy their meals, but also would enjoy cooking after they'd been taught Le Cordon Bleu. Le Cordon Bleu schools have been created around the world to spread French culture and the art of living à la française, as well as French cuisine. Skills like cuisine cooking, pastry and baking are all taught at the Cordon Bleu schools, as well as hospitality management. With over 35 schools in 20 countries around the world, Le Cordon Bleu is recognised as one of the best culinary training courses in the world and has taught over 20,000 students. André J. Cointreau purchased the school from Brassart in 1985. André is a direct descendant of the founding family of the Cointreau liquor and Remy Martin cognac. André began his career with Unilever and then, later, the American Express Banking Corporation, before he joined the family businesses as a commercial director in 1977. But amid battles for controlling of the liquor magnate by the controlling families, Cointreau stuck out on his own in 1984 by buying Le Cordon Bleu from Madame Elizabeth Brassart, an old family friend. Elizabeth had decided to retire in 1984 at the age of 87 and sold Le Cordon Bleu to André then. Elizabeth Brassart died on Monday the 5th of October 1998 at the age of 99.
Coming to France? Well, I really encourage you to explore the French countryside. And a fabulous way to do this is to come and visit me in Montmorillon as part of my Vienne residencies. Now, in the background, this fabulous kitchen unfortunately isn't mine. I wish it was. It's so beautiful. But instead it is a friend of mine's that I'm looking after their place. But you can come and cook with me in Montmorillon, back at home. We'll share fabulous experiences and I'll get to show you around a town that really has come and taken my heart. And fed me a lot of good food, I can say. You'll stay in our lovely 2-bedroom renovated townhouse that's situated right in the heart of town. Just opposite a really cute little bar, actually. You'll be able to walk around the town, going to restaurants, markets on Wednesday, local galleries and fabulous local stalls. Plus, we can explore together neighbouring towns, historical sites, and the cities of Limoges, Poitiers, and the chateaux of the Loire aren't that far either. Each residency includes accommodation, a welcome apéro, and a cooking class with me. Yep, at my home, and so much more. So come and explore some Andrew Pryor Fabulously hospitality. I can't wait to see you. The N residencies are available from May until October, and you can get more details on my website, andrewpryorfabulously.com.
Eugénie Brazier is one of the famous Mères Lyonnaises, and as such was nicknamed Mère Brazier. Eugénie was the first woman to get 3 Michelin stars for a restaurant. In fact, she got 6 at the same time, with 3 stars for both her restaurants. Some of Eugénie's students were the who's who of French cuisine today, Paul Bocuse and Bernard Pacul. Her legacy, though, to women in the kitchen is something that still continues today. This is her story. Born Wednesday the 12th of June 1895 in La Trontière, a small village located around 10 kilometres from the Bresse region of France, renowned for its breast chickens. This was a small rural town with a population of just 300, only 12 more than its population today. She learned about cookery while still a child, and by the time she was 5, she knew how to make the sweet and savoury tarts that her mother cooked for the family. Among the dishes she first learned to make was the barbaton, which consisted of fried bacon, onion, potatoes and garlic. Her schooling was confined to just the winter months, and then only when she was not busy working on the farm. At the age of 10, Eugénie's mother passed away, and she was then placed in the care of another family in the region, where she would look after the cows and pigs on the farm. This farm life would also be the starting blocks for her career as a chef, as she would learn the basics of Bresse cuisine. In addition to her board and lodging, she received a pair of clogs and a new dress every year. Becoming pregnant at the age of just 19 to a married man living in a nearby town, her son Gaston was born, and it is said that her father at the time when she left the farm to see him threw her out. Whether true or not, what we do know is that Eugénie would then make her way to Lyon to be employed as a nursing maid, giving her milk and nanny to a bourgeois family, the Millet, who were bakers and pasta makers. When their cook became sick, Eugénie would then take over the kitchen of their residence. She had no recipe books and provided meals based on what she had picked up from the family's cook. She said, "Cooking is not complicated. You have to be well organised to remember things and have a bit of taste. I learned to cook by doing it. It's as simple as that." A year later, Eugénie was hired to work in the kitchen of Mère Filiot at her bistro at 73 Rue de Caen in Lyon. Here, she started an apprenticeship in Filot's women's only kitchen. Mère Filiot was known as the Queen of Chickens, having, it is said, in her career to have cooked over 500,000 chickens. Mère Filiot is also said to be the creator of the fabulous truffle chicken in half morning, which is a chicken with truffle slices under the skin that's cooked in a broth that is a well-known Lyonnaise dish even today. In the 19th century, there were many women who ran restaurants in Lyon. They were called mères, and hence the term mères lyonnaises. Mère, the French language word for mother, is an honorary title given to the talented female professional cooks, many of whom had no formal training in France during the 18th, 19th and 20th centuries. Between 1759 and the end of the 20th century, multiple women had been called mères. Their work, many believe, turned the city of Lyon into the gastronomic centre of France and the world. From Filot, Eugénie would move to another restaurant in Lyon, the Brasserie du Dragon, where she was better paid. Then, on Tuesday the 19th of April, 1921, Eugénie created her first restaurant. With 12,000 francs capital, which is around 10,000 euros today, this would be a bouchon. The bouchon is a Lyon restaurant where you can eat specialties including quenelles, salad lyonnaise, and cervelle de canut. Located at number 12 Rue Royale, in the first arrondissement of Lyon, very close to the Rhone Quays, the restaurant was called Mère Brazier. And thanks to the word of mouth and the praise of the gastronomic critics, the restaurant quickly became the most popular in Lyon. Eugénie was living in a small building 17 kilometres west of Lyon that was without gas or electricity. Her lover at the time was said to be the driver of a racing car manufacturer and his friends and Eugenie's customers at Mère Brazier encouraged her to open another restaurant there. So, in 1929, she did just that, and this became Eugenie's second restaurant, Col de la Lure. Elizabeth David, the fabulous food writer, would describe the restaurant Col de la Lure here. High above its notorious fogs and damp, airy and cool, surrounded by a large garden and much greenery. This was, for a time, my favourite restaurant in all of France. The menu scarcely changed from year to year, with the exception of one dish, fish quenelles with a rather rich sauce. The food was all comparatively plain. There was no showing off, no fireworks, the calm confidence, the certitude that all here would be as it should, which one felt upon entering the establishment was somehow communicated to her customers by Madame Brazier herself. Invisible though she was in the kitchen, and by her front of house staff, the restaurant could have been in no country but France. The cooking practiced by Madame Brazier and her brigade was the cooking of the French provinces at its best, and also its most traditional. In 1932, Eugénie was awarded 2 stars in the Michelin Guide for each of her 2 restaurants. The following year, though, when the guide introduced 3-star ratings for the first time, in 1933, Eugénie was awarded 3 Michelin stars, twice for her 2 restaurants in Lyon, which she retained until 1968. This would make her the first of 2 women to get 3 Michelin stars at the same time, with Marie Bourget's also achieving this in 1933. The next time a female chef would achieve 3 Michelin stars would not be until 1951, when Marguerite Biz did, and then that would be followed up by Anne-Sophie Pic in 2007. Eugenie's award of 3 Michelin stars for 2 restaurants at the same time, being a total of 6, would not just be the first time for a woman chef, but also the first time for any chef. This feat would not be achieved again until 1997, with Alain Ducasse achieving the honour. Only 4 other chefs have been awarded this. Marc Ferrand in 2001, Thomas Keller in 2006, Joe Robuchon in 2001, 2006 and 2012, and Yannick Allenot in 2007 and then again in 2017. Eugenie's restaurants would quickly become the attraction and place to go in Lyon. The once mayor of Lyon, Edouard Nignon, 3-time Prime Minister of France, said that Eugénie Brazier does more than he does for the fame of the city of Lyon. As an enemy of the Nazis and the puppet Vichy government, he was imprisoned during much of Second World War. And under his collaborator replacement, Brazier fell foul of the authorities. She refused to compromise her standards and was repeatedly fined, and on one occasion imprisoned for a week for breaching the Nazi occupiers' regulations about food rationings. In 1941, the regime ordered the closure of the Rue Royale restaurant for buying food without the requisite authorization. When the war ended, Eugénie held a celebratory feast at the Col de la Lure for a large number of people from Lyon. She hired a band, a clown, and a guest sang La Marseillaise during the banquet. The 2 establishments were restored to their pre-war eminence. The food writer Joseph Westberg remembered her as a formidable woman with a voice like a foghorn, rough language, and strong forearms. With regular customers, she was known to take matters into her own hands. One recalled her telling him, "Mon petit, yesterday you had the poule demi-doule. Tonight you have a quenelle." Eugenie's customers included well-known figures like Marlene Dietrich and Charles de Gaulle. Eugénie had a reputation for being demanding about the quality of her ingredients. Her chicken supplier once joked that soon he would be expected to give the birds manicures before she would accept them. She was equally particular about cleanliness, emptying storage areas daily for cleaning. She hated waste and would create staff dinners from trimmings and save anything left on dinner plates to feed her pigs. A menu change was required by seasonal availability. When there were few vegetables, she'd serve a macaroni gratin. Eugenie's son, Gaston, took over operation of her Mère Brazier Bouchon, whilst Eugénie focused on the Col de l'Allure Bouchon. It is said that they had a falling out, and that this is one of the reasons Gaston stopped working with his mother and went out on his own at the Bouchon. A young Paul Bocuse, just 20 at the time, started his apprenticeship with Eugénie Brazier after his service during the Second World War. He worked with Eugénie at the Col de l'Allure Bouchon, and in addition to cooking, he also maintained the vegetable garden, the cows, and did the laundry and ironing. Bocuse would go on to learn the cuisine familière, which is the term for the simple cooking of fresh ingredients carefully and simply for the family. Bocuse is said to be one of the greatest chefs of the 20th century and kept 3 Michelin stars for 53 years for his restaurant at Bocuse in Lyon. Bocuse called Eugénie one of the pillars of global gastronomy. In 1968, at the age of 72, Eugénie handed the Bouchon at the Col de l'Allure to her son Gaston to run. Then, on the 2nd of March 1977, at the age of 81, Eugénie Brazier died. Sadly, 3 years before that, in 1974, Gaston, her son, had died, so Eugénie was buried with Gaston at Marier Cemetery in Mirabel, just outside of Lyon. Her death was marked by obituaries, not only in the French press, but in foreign papers. The New York Times and papers across the US carried articles. Tribute was paid in the British press, and a Swiss paper observed that the gourmets of Lyon were in mourning. Eugénie was able to see, though, 6 years before her death, the succession of her restaurants to Jacotte Brazier, her granddaughter, and Jacotte would run the Bouchon for 30 years until selling the restaurant in 2004 to her friends Philippe Bertrand and Bob Tosh. They would keep the name to honour Eugénie and her legacy, and today the current chef, Mathieu Venet, continues this honour. Some of Lyon's most famous dishes can be attributed to Eugénie Brazier, from artichoke with foie gras, quenelles, langoustine, belle amour, terrines, gratin de macaroni, voile demi-douille, galette et chabreneuf, which is a dessert with apple confit that's flambéed, to name just a few. In the year 2000, the city of Lyon renamed the street where Mère Brazier was closest to as Rue Eugénie Brazier, and in 2018, the city of Strasbourg also named a street after her. Eugénie's accomplishments were largely forgotten outside of France for many years, though. When Alain Ducasse received his 6th Michelin star in 1998, Florence Fabricant, food and wine writer for the New York Times, announced this as the first time any chef had received 6 stars. Papers elsewhere in the US and in Britain made the same mistake. In 2016, Eater published a feature on Brazier, subheadlined "How History Erased This Influential Chef." The article observed that Quentin Cru's 1978 book, The Great Chefs of France, barely mentions her, and that the 2007 Food, The History of Taste, a collection of essays by French, German, and Belgian American and British food historians, discussed Brazier's important commentaries but did not mention her. Famously, though, Eugénie fled the spotlight. In particular, she rejected the Legion of Honor, which is France's highest French order of merit. She's quoted as saying that she was cooking for love and not for glory. Although Eugénie had a reputation for menus that changed little, her recipe book, begun in her last years and published after her death, contains more than 300 dishes. The editors of the book interspersed the chapters with details of 7 of her classic menus. In 2007, 30 years after Eugénie's death, her granddaughter Jaconte founded the L'Association des Amis de Eugénie Brazier, the Association of Friends of Eugénie Brazier, to pay tribute to her grandmother. Paul Bocuse and Bocuse sponsored the association. Its aim is to promote the careers of young women apprentices, guide and support them in the very masculine world of cooking, and pass on to them Brazier's professional values. This association supports young women trainees, paying their tuition fees and funding training materials. The association also sponsors the annual Eugénie Brazier Literary Prizes, awarded to female authors of cookbook, the Grand Prix, to an illustrator or photographer of a cookbook, the Prix de l'iconographie, a food-related novel or essay, the Prix du roman d'essai gourmand, and a cookbook in the category Francophone countries and elsewhere. The prizes and scholarships are awarded every year at the Lyon City Hall in December during the association's annual evening. So the life of this fabulous female chef, Eugénie Brazier, not only influenced French cuisine during her lifetime, but continues this day in her teachings, but also through her legacy and foundation. The future of French food is bright because of a little farm girl that embraced life and her love of good food and hard work. Eugénie Brazier, merci beaucoup.
Have you got an idea for an episode of Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast, that you'd like to hear? Well, slide into my DMs on Instagram at Andrew Pryor Fabulously to let me know all about them. Then I can record them for a future episode of the podcast.
Gaston Lenôtre was born on Friday, 28th of May 1920, in the commune of Saint-Nicolas-de-Bosc in Normandy. Saint-Nicolas-de-Bosc is a very small town in the Eure department that currently, as of 2021, had only a population of just over 200 people. You'd probably know the department of Eure for the town of Cheverny, located just an hour's drive from Gaston's home. This picturesque region of Normandy, with its rolling green hills and tranquil countryside, is not only a haven for art lovers due to Claude Monet's famous garden in Cheverny, but also a region rich in culinary heritage. The lush pastures of Normandy provide some of the finest dairy products in France, which would later influence Gaston's insistence on using the best butter in his pastries. His parents moved the family to Paris when he was young and became workers in restaurants. Gaston's mother, Eleanor, she worked as a pastry chef and general cook for French Baron Pryor and then Baron de Rothschild at his residencies in Paris and Bordeaux. These prestigious positions undoubtedly exposed Eleanor to high culinary standards and techniques, which she passed on to her son. Meanwhile, his father Gaston Sr. worked as a chef saucier at the Grand Hotel in Paris. The Grand Hotel you might know as the home of the Café de la Paix, opposite the Opera Garnier. It attracted stars like Marlene Dietrich, Oscar Wilde and Roman Polanski. This illustrious establishment, with its opulent decor and refined clientele, was a hub of Parisian high society, offering young Gaston a glimpse into the glamorous world of haute cuisine. Eventually, due to ill health, his father was forced to move the family back to Normandy. At first, Gaston tried working as a cabinet maker, but rejected this career. However, after successfully making a rice pudding, Gaston decided on a career as a chef like his parents, and he did an apprenticeship at a bakery in Bernay, where he was introduced to the making of millefeuilles and eclairs. This pivotal moment marked the beginning of his lifelong passion for pastry. After his apprenticeship, Gaston found it hard to get a chef position in Normandy, so he would bicycle to Paris to sell homemade chocolates at Les Halles and other markets. During the war, the German occupation destroyed the ranks of the local bakers, which Gaston and his brother Marcel saw as an opportunity. They set up their own small business, with their mother Eleanor working at the cash desk. Gaston met and married Colette Courlet in 1943. She would not only become his wife, but also his business partner in many future ventures. Colette was the daughter of an engineer and grew up in Paris. Gaston and Colette would have 3 children together, Alain, Sylvie and Annie. Their partnership was a cornerstone of his success, combining his culinary genius with her business acumen. After the war, Lenôtre opened a small bakery at A Rue Gambetta in Pont-Audener in Normandy. This was a great success. Pont-en-Demer, a charming town with its picturesque canals and historic architecture, was the perfect backdrop for Lenôtre's burgeoning talent. His creations quickly became popular, drawing customers from near and far. In 1957, he sold the bakery in Normandy and moved to Paris, then bought a small bakery in the 16th arrondissement and set up a shop at Rue de Tourtais. The 16th arrondissement, known for its affluent residents and elegant streets, provided an ideal location for Lenôtre to attract a sophisticated clientele. Lenôtre was renowned for concentrating on simple preparations and fresh ingredients, but it was his insistence on using the best butter in his pastries that would become his signature, some would say. He understood that the quality of ingredients is paramount in creating exceptional pastries. His butter came from the lush pastures of Normandy, known for producing some of the finest dairy products in the world. Lenôtre compared the making of pastry to architecture, where structure, materials and precision are key to the making of great pastries. He believed that just as an architect meticulously plans every detail of a building, a pastry chef must carefully measure and assemble ingredients to create a masterpiece. This philosophy was evident in his meticulous approach to his craft. He would make for his many customers delicious salads, macarons, macaroons and barbarians. One of his creations that became his first famous dessert was Success, an entremet with an almond meringue that's topped with a nougatine cracker cream. This dessert, with its delicate layers and exquisite flavours, showcased Lenôtre's ability to elevate traditional recipes to new heights. Paris was a great success for Gaston, and he would supply high-quality pastries to esteemed Parisian families like the Dassault, Hersant, and Lagardère families. These influential clients appreciated his dedication to quality and innovation, helping to cement his reputation as one of the finest pastry chefs in Paris. In 1964, Lenôtre entered the catering field, and due to improvements in freezing food with modernisation, he was able to quickly expand the number of diners he could serve at events. This innovation allowed him to bring his gourmet creations to a wider audience, catering for grand events and prestigious gatherings. With this in mind, Gaston set up what would be known as a laboratory in Plassey-Yvelines in France in 1968. He worked on new technologies and ideas in cooking. This laboratory was a hub of culinary experimentation, where Lenôtre and his team developed new techniques and recipes that would revolutionise the world of pastry. Lenôtre would open his first cooking school in Plaisir in 1971. Chefs David Bouley and Jean-Paul Genet would study here. Every year, in fact, more than 3,000 pastry chefs would perfect their skills at this school. This institute became a beacon of excellence in the culinary world, attracting aspiring chefs from around the globe. Throughout his career, many well-known chefs apprenticed for Gaston, like Pierre Hermé, Sébastien Canol, Michel Richard, and Alain Ducasse. Pierre Hermé said of his apprenticeship with Gaston, "This is where I learned the basics of the profession, rigour in my work, attention to detail, a sense of quality." These chefs have gone on to become legends in their own right, carrying forward Lenôtre's legacy of excellence. Michel Richard was sent in 1974 to the US to open a Lenôtre restaurant and patisserie in New York. But it wasn't a success, and after a year it was closed. However, this setback didn't deter Lenôtre. His ability to innovate and adapt was key to his enduring success. Bouncing back from this failed venture, he opened in 1982 Le Chef de France at Walt Disney World's Epcot Center with Paul Bocuse and Roger Verger in Orlando, Florida. This venture was a resounding success, bringing French haute cuisine to an international audience and showcasing the rich culinary heritage of France. Maison Lenôtre would open its first shop internationally in Berlin in 1975. It was followed by shops in Japan, the Middle East, Korea, Las Vegas, Bangkok, and even Beijing. Each new location brought Lenôtre's exquisite pastries to a new audience, spreading his influence far and wide. In 1976, Colette and Gaston opened Prix Catalan in the Napoleon III Pavilion in the Bois de Boulogne. With chef Frédéric Anton, they would obtain 3 Michelin stars. This prestigious accolade was a testament to their dedication to culinary excellence and innovation. Lenôtre published a book in 1978, Lenôtre's Desserts and Pastries, which became a must-have for aspiring chefs and home bakers alike. The book is filled with detailed recipes and insights into Lenôtre's techniques, making it a valuable resource for anyone passionate about pastry. In 1985, he opened the restaurant Élysée Pavilion opposite the Grand Palais. At the same time, he was forced to seek capital investment from the French hotel chain Accor. They would completely absorb Maison Lenôtre in 1992. But even then, Gaston would remain involved in the company until his retirement. This partnership with Accor helped to expand Lenôtre's reach even further, bringing his culinary creations to new markets and audiences. The restaurant Panoramique de Stadium de France in 1998 was taken over by Lenôtre, and at the same time, Gaston became the official caterer to the Football World Cup. This prestigious role allowed him to showcase his culinary talents on a global stage, further cementing his reputation as a master of his craft. On Monday, December the 20th, 1999, Gaston married his second wife, Catherine Pan. Throughout his life, Gaston employed 12 of his children and relations in the business. Sylvie, his daughter, helped in writing his 13 books, the first of which was published in 1975. His other daughter, Annie, was in charge of the gift division of Lenôtre. And Alain, his son, would become a chef as well and go on to run the American cooking school. This close-knit family involvement was a testament to the enduring legacy of the Lenôtre name in the world of pastry. In 2003, Lenôtre became a member of the Comité Colbert, which is committed to promoting French luxury and know-how around the world, and it includes brands like Lacoste, Chanel, Hermès and YSL, to name a few. This prestigious committee works to uphold the standards of French craftsmanship and luxury, and Lenôtre's inclusion was a recognition of his significant contributions to French culinary heritage. Lenôtre would create many of French cuisine's renowned pastries, like the opera cake, perhaps inspired by his father having worked in Paris across from the Opera Garnier. The opera cake has an almond base soaked in coffee syrup with 2 types of coffee cream, followed by a layer of chocolate ganache and opera written over the top. This elegant and sophisticated dessert is a true masterpiece, reflecting Lenôtre's dedication to perfection and detail. He also created the Chouche, Feuille d'Automne, Bagatelle, and Le Col Pour. He would be the inventor of haute couture pastry, elevating the art of pastry making to new heights. But he also loved classics like Le Colombier, a bread filled with candied fruits from Genoa, and the Financier, as well as the macaroons. These timeless creations continue to delight pastry lovers around the world. Some would say that Gaston had a great sense of humour, and a representation of this was that he named his holiday villa Macaron, and his yacht the Vol-au-Vent. These playful names reflect his love for his craft and his ability to find joy and humour in his work. Sadly, on Thursday the 8th of January 2009, at the age of 88, in the town of Sennelier, Gaston Lenôtre died. He was buried in the family vault at Bernay. He was survived by his first and second wives, 3 children, younger brother Marcel, 8 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren. His passing marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on through his contributions to the world of pastry and the many chefs he mentored and inspired. Gaston Lenôtre was named the pastry chef of the century and also Le Gentleman Pâtissier. His influence on the world of pastry is immeasurable, and his dedication to excellence and innovation continues to inspire chefs and bakers around the world. We owe this success in space and time to our team's mastery of know-how. That's why we attach so much importance to passing on knowledge. Gaston Lenôtre.
Fabulously Delicious is a part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Do you love French food? And do you want to get to know more about me, your host, Andrew Pryor, and my life here in regional France, as well as get some great offers exclusive to my Substack newsletter subscribers? There's also recipes, reviews of places that I've been to, so you can get some more tips and fabulous information on life in rural France, as well as Paris, my second home. Sign up now via the show notes in this episode, or if you're watching on YouTube, in the description on YouTube. Or you can go to my website, andrewpryorfabulously.com. That's it for another episode of Season 4 of Fabulously Delicious. Next week, we'll have part 2 of this episode, where we find out more about another 5 fabulous French chefs, 2 of which are actually American. What's the most fabulous thing that you've learned from today's episode of Fabulously Delicious? Contact me via Instagram at andrewpryorfabulously, or you can email me on contact@andrewpryorfabulously.com. I love to chat with you. We could chat about the chefs that I've mentioned in this episode, or we could chat about French food. I just love to chat to people about food all the time, as well as eat it. We could do both. Thank you for listening. And remember, you know what my motto is? Whatever you do, do it fabulously. Merci beaucoup and bon app!